Hi, I'm Heather. Welcome to class. Today we're going to do a sequence for insomnia. We'll be doing the first 5 poses in a sequence given by BKS Iyengar in his book Yoga, the Path to Holistic Health. Before we begin, if you find this video helpful, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to start by demonstrating Uttanasana, making use of the chair and a bolster. Now, so Uttanasana being our first pose, our standing forward bend. Those who feel stiff, whether it's in the hamstrings, in the hips, in the lower back, using height more than the bricks, which is where we're headed if we're more supple, is going to be really helpful, so you're not overstretching and you're not feeling resistant to the stretch. Because this is a sequence specifically for insomnia, we're actually wanting to really wind down, settle the nervous system down. And if we overdo in any of these poses in this sequence, then of course that's going to be counterproductive. So as I said, if you're stiff, you can use your chair, you can use your bolster or blankets, and you come forward with your forearms crossed and your forehead on your forearms. So the forehead is resting down. Now, if you're really feeling stiff and even that feels too low, then of course you can come further forward and cross your forearms on the top of the chair, on the handle of the chair. And maybe still you've got further to go, you can use the seat of the chair. So you see there's a number of ways of working with the chair in Uttanasana, but what you want to be sure of is keeping the knees straight. Yes, don't go into the knee bend. Straight knees, flexion in the hips, trying to keep the lumbar spine moving in rather than it rounding. Those who are more supple, we will bring our bricks in, perhaps 1 brick, maybe 2 bricks, so that it's not the forehead that we're resting down, but it's more the crown of the head. So let's bring our bricks in. So there's a few ways that we could work with the setup of the bricks. If you're feeling tight, you could potentially work with the 2 tall bricks like so. And again, it might be more the forehead that's coming down, but potentially we can get the crown down. Let's say you flatten 1 brick, you have another brick standing tall, perhaps the crown can come down, more that feeling of the head descending. And another thing that you could try is separating the feet more. You could have the feet as wide as the mat. See if that makes it more accessible to come down so that you find support. And you might find that, the first few breaths you're feeling a bit stiff, but in time, potentially you can eliminate 1 brick and go a little bit lower. But the idea here is to stay, once we've made our adjustments and come into the pose, we want to stay as still and quiet as we can so that we are facilitating the nervous system's rest. So find out what height is going to work for you. You can decide, do you want to use 1 brick or 2 brick? How are you going to be able to sustain this? If we're staying for at least 2 minutes, how are you going to be able to sustain it? Now you can either reach your hands back to catch behind the heels and the ankles, or you can set fingertips to the floor with the elbows slightly bent, but then draw your shoulder blades into the back and up the back towards your hips. The thigh muscles are staying active, so the quadriceps are drawing up, the kneecaps are flattening into the knee joint as the back of the knees are broadening, back of the legs lengthening and broadening. So even though our aim is to find a sense of rest, there's still some work required, there's still actions required to maintain the pose. So we've got the firm action in the legs, the arms, the shoulder blades. But have the intention to slow your breath down now. Smooth, slow, steady inhalation. Smooth, slow, steady exhalation. And as you exhale, see if you can feel the abdominal contents and muscles retreat back
towards the back abdominal wall. So that's on your exhalations. Now, as we consider coming out of the pose, we want to come out slowly. So you can press to the fingertips, raise the head up. So you start to feel the blood drain from the head back to the heart. Keep your spine straight, lengthen the sternum forward away from the navel as you then bring your hands onto your waist and slowly inhale to stand all the way up. Pause for a moment. No hurry to move on to the next pose. We just stay establishing a steady gaze, a quiet gaze. Moving on to the next pose, Prasarita Padottanasana, the spread foot intense stretch pose. Again, we can potentially make use of bricks, 1 brick, 2 bricks, or the chair. So for example, if you do feel stiff, you could have your legs wide, feet are parallel. You could have your chair here in front of you. You could rest your forearms on the chair and then your forehead on your forearms. But if you're supple and you can go further down, once more, you can potentially make use of your bricks. So remember, we want to get the crown of the head down if you can. So the head is descending, and some may find 1 brick is enough. Others, maybe the head will come to the floor. But remember, we're wanting to be restful. So find out, how wide does the stance need to be? I often see students in the classroom not taking quite a wide enough stance to achieve the feeling of the torso being able to descend and the crown of the head descending. So explore taking the legs a little wider and see if that helps you get a deeper flexion in the hips and thereby bringing the head down. So find out, where are you going to be able to reside in the pose? If ordinarily in a strong dynamic practice you can get the crown of the head down, that's fine. You can do this pose now with the crown of the head down, but because we're wanting to be restful, I'm going to be using a brick. The hands can come back, so the heels of the hands are in line with the heels of the feet. Then lift your shoulder blades up the back. So just watching, they're not pulling down into the neck. Shoulder blades lift up the back, and from the elbow tip to the shoulder tip, draw the upper arm bones into the shoulder joint. Then maintain the action in the thighs. So again, the kneecaps are gripped, quadriceps are gripping, they're lifting up, they're pressing to the bone, kneecaps are pressing into the joint. Inner thigh muscles lifting up into the inner thigh bone. And we're breathing smoothly, intending to find some quietness within ourselves through holding the body still and steady and working with the breath in a steady manner. Smooth, slow, steady inhalation. Smooth, slow, steady exhalation. And as you exhale, allow the abdominal contents to retreat back towards the back abdominal wall. Now again, as we prepare to come out, consider moving slowly. Don't be in a hurry to come out. You slowly raise the head up, you walk your hands forward. You lift the head a little higher than the heart, allowing the blood to drain from the head back to the heart. Keeping the spine straight, lengthen the breastbone forward away from the navel as you bring hands to the waist. Inhale and stand all the way up, and then we can bring the legs back in together. We're going to move on to supported down face dog pose. I'm going to take my mat into the wall because I'm going to rest the bolster against the wall so that it doesn't slip when I bring the crown of the head down to rest on the bolster. So there are a number of ways of doing supported down face dog pose, and I've explored them in other videos. Today we're going to use the bolster. If you've got a smaller bolster, then you may need to add more height to that with some folded blankets. So you'll see I've put the narrow end of my bolster against the wall, and then as I'm coming to downward facing dog pose, Adho Mukha Svanasana, I want to place the hands well forward towards the wall, certainly not back here, because if you have a look, if I've got my hands in line with the front end of the mat here, I try and come into my dog pose, then of course my head is going to miss the bolster, and if in an effort to get to the bolster I have to bend the elbows, it feels quite ridiculous. It's not quite restful. So you walk your hands further forward beyond the halfway line, I would suggest, depending on the height of your bolster and the mobility of your shoulders. And then you draw chin into the chest in an effort to bring the crown of the head onto the bolster. But the elbows stay straight. So walk your hands further forward if you're finding that you're having to bend your elbows, or put more height underneath the head. So potentially you could put bricks underneath your bolster, or you could put blankets underneath or on top of your bolster. It can be tricky if the shoulders are tight. You may need to work with more height. But in your dog pose, don't be too fascinated with trying to get the heels down. They can be slightly lifted. Focus on the lift of the sitting bones, the straightening of the knees, the straightening of the arms, the feeling of support under the head, and the quietness that that can bring. And once you've settled, you intend to keep the body still, except for the movement of the breath. See if you can slow the breath down. Smooth, slow, steady inhalation. Smooth, slow, steady exhalation. And as you exhale, see that the abdominal contents can shrink back, settle back towards the back abdominal wall. Now, as we come out of the pose, we're going to be transitioning to the next pose. So slowly you can raise the head up, bend your knees, take your knees apart, big toes touching, settle the hips back to the heels. If kneeling like this is problematic, you need to put support here between the heels and the buttocks. That's fine. But we do want to rest forward with the chest on the bolster. So if your knees and hips are supple and you're able to bring the bolster just in this straightforward manner, do that so that you can rest the upper abdomen and the chest on the bolster. Some of us may need to turn the bolster up a bit higher, depends on the shape of your bolster. Others, you might want to put bricks underneath your bolster, lift that bolster up, perhaps blankets on top of the bolster. I know that there are many people who have concerns in their knees and they might need the bolster here or a pile of blankets here, in which case
coming forward perhaps to the chair with the chair against the wall, finding a way of being able to rest. And it can be really lovely to have that support underneath the breastbone. So see what works for you. And then when you're forward, you might like to turn your head in one direction and rest it on the bolster. Or you may prefer to keep your arms forward and rest your forehead on your forearms. You could potentially put a blanket there for your forearms, for your forehead, and rest the forearms down on the floor. So you can decide. But again, we make our adjustments. We find the way that we're going to be in the pose. So this is Adho Mukha Virasana, the downward facing hero pose. Working the tailbone down, allowing for a gentle flexion in the spine, and as significant a flexion in the hips as you can manage. And slow your breath down. Keep your shoulders relaxed. And your jaw relaxed. So just notice whether the teeth are clenching. Can you keep your teeth apart? Can you relax the tongue away from the roof of the mouth? Now again, as we consider coming out of the pose, let's move slowly. Raise the head up. And slowly bring the torso up. And let's just sit for a moment. Find a neutral position. Soften your gaze as your eyes settle straight ahead, eyes at eye level. And then we'll move on to the next pose. I'm now going to move my mat away from the wall, and we're going to do Paschimottanasana, which is our seated forward bend. And again, if you feel stiff in the hamstrings, in the hips, in the lower back, I suggest that you use a chair. So I'll give you the visual here. You'll be sitting. It can definitely be helpful for you to sit up on a blanket, particularly if you're feeling stiff. And then you'll have your chair here over the legs. And so then you can bring your forearms onto the chair seat and rest there. Or you could even put your bolster on the chair seat and bring it in quite close to you if you're struggling to come forward. Those of us who are supple and can come into a seated forward bend, we're going to use our bolster on our shins. But because we want the elbows to be out here as we're holding the feet, sometimes the weight of the arms causes the bolster to fall down. So we're going to bring our bricks in here underneath the bolster just to offer that extra bit of support. So I've got my bricks. They can be flat there on either sides of the shins, and the bolster can come over the shins and onto your bricks. Then whether you feel that you can catch the outer feet, or if it's better for you to put a belt there, you hold on to the belt. The arms are supported on the bolster. Then you draw yourself forward. See that you're keeping the front body long. The abdomen is quiet. And then we bring the forehead down to rest. If it's a strain to bring your forehead down, you need to raise this height up. Perhaps you put some folded blankets here, or maybe even you go to using the chair. But again, we're intending to find some rest in this pose.
So we observe the actions in the legs. Yes, we are staying active in the legs. The thighs are pressing down, broadening the back of the thighs, broadening the back of the knees, rolling the inner thighs down and pressing the inner feet forward, away from the groins, and the outer feet are peeling back towards the outer hips. And as the hands are holding the feet, they're helping to draw those outer feet back. And the upper arm bone is drawing back into the shoulder joint. Outer edges of the shoulder blades drawing in towards each other as the shoulder blades ride down the back towards the hips. Then slow your breath down. If your nose is being squashed, make sure your bolster is further forward enough that the nose is not being squashed. You don't want to compromise the breath. Easy, steady inhalation. Easy, steady exhalation. See if you can lengthen, deepen, slow down the breath. As we prepare to come out of the pose, again, consider moving slowly. Raise the head up, lift the torso up. Slowly come up to sit, and let's just sit. Find neutral. The legs can be relaxed. The gaze is relaxed. The shoulders are relaxed. As I mentioned at the beginning of class, we were doing the first 5 poses in the sequence for insomnia. If you want to lie down, settle into Shavasana now, you can. If you're keen to know the full sequence, I have the full class in my video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. My video library houses over 400 full-length classes, and you can start a monthly subscription with a 7-day free trial. That's it for today. Thanks for joining me. For more in-depth teaching, check out the video library on my website, heatherkitchenyoga.com.au. The link is in the description box below.